Hello, fellow modelers. Bruce here again. Many times, prototype research provides the subjects for our modeling. Such is the case for my desire to include some slate cutter sheds in my scene around the slate pit. In the photos that accompany this, you will see first a postcard, fuzzy as it might be, that shows a close-up of such a shed, and we get the idea that the roof and the walls were board and batten. The second photograph shows how prolific these were around the slate pit, and that's my reason for including a few of these in my scene. And finally, you see something that's familiar here because it was the subject of a previous video, and that is the cardboard mock-up of such a shed, and sitting next to it, one of three sheds that I have scratch built. The subject of this video is to show you how I go about scratch building the sheds. Follow along. So, if you wanted to do this in a step-by-step, the first thing you would do is find a donor piece of cardstock, and in my case, it's this packing material that came with a set of draperies that my wife bought, and it actually is a corrugated cardboard, but it's quite thin, very stable, and I have here already laid out the side walls. So there's 3 side walls with no window, 3 side walls with 1 window, back walls which are blank, 3 front walls which have a doorway cut out of it, and 6 roof panels. And that's basically all you need as far as the subwalls are concerned. So after cutting those out, I laid out the outlines for the door openings and cut those out one layer at a time. I have cut out the window openings on 2 out of the 3. And believe it or not, cardstock can be sanded. So if you have a little roughness to that window opening, just take an emery board. You can cut it down to the width that will fit in, and you can sand it. Here you can see is a window where you can see where I laid out the dimensions of the window, and that is already cut out. And again, you can sand that a little bit if it's a little bit uneven, although with the window trim that we'll be adding and the siding, you can pretty much hide some slight imperfections in the cutting of these openings. This is not a contest model. So there's 2 out of the 3. Windows line up, which means your measurements were pretty good. And really, all you need, as a matter of fact, all the tools you need up to this point are simply an HO gauge scale, a small machinist square, pencil, of course, and an X-Acto knife with a number 11 blade. And these are small enough openings that you don't need to have a straight edge to guide your cuts. You just very carefully go down the lines you've drawn. And the first time through, you just want to kind of etch the path that you want your blade to follow. And you're going to do this in 3 or 4 passes, so you're not going to try to cut all the way through in the first pass. And I don't know if you can see this well enough, but what I'm doing is only going about 2/3 of the way down the window. I'm not trying to go to the near side to me, because I can swing this around and pick up the other side now and come and complete the cut. And again, about 3 passes will do it. Always helpful to have a cutting mat like this underneath, which is very forgiving on its cuts. It's self-healing. Although eventually you would have messed it up enough that you'd want to buy a new one. So about every 2nd or 3rd Christmas, I put one on my Christmas list. My dear wife certainly doesn't mind going into one of the craft stores to pick one up, since she enjoys visiting those craft stores for her own purposes. So this is just about cut out. try to poke it out and you're getting a little resistance, just go over everything again once, because it's better not to push it out and create a ragged edge. It's better to take an extra swipe or two in each of the directions. And there it lifts out. Look at it, just give it a quick swipe with this emery board. Actually, it doesn't even need it, it's such a clean cut. So there we are. All the walls or subwalls are ready now. And the next step would be to start cutting the strip wood and gluing it to these subwalls, which I'll show you a little bit of in a minute. Okay, let's just review the wood that I'm going to be gluing to the outside of these cardstock walls. I could have used 1x12s, but I had a good supply of 2x12s, so I'll be gluing 2x12s to the outside, just side by side all the way across. By the way, when you do that, go right over the window, because you can easily cut that out from the back side. So there's no need to, try to piece a piece down here and a piece up there. Just glue right over the window. With the doors, if you want to, at a certain point, you're probably going to have some that are overlapping here a little bit, and you come around the back and can trim it out. On top of here, you might want to cut pieces shorter and just glue them, but for the most part, glue it, cut it later. Same as at the peak of the roof. Cut pieces a little long, get them even on the bottom, let them stick over on the top, and then you just come back and cut them off. That's how you take a project that could take 2 evenings and get it down to a 1 evening project. So my wood is 2x12s for the basic boards. The battens, because this is going to be a board and batten construction, I decided to use 2x2s. You could have used 2x3s, but I have a good supply of 2x2s, so I got those. And just a little bit of 2x4 wood here to trim around windows and doors, and that's it. And the stain was a basic, 2 teaspoons of India ink into a pint of 91% isopropyl alcohol, stained for a half hour and then taken out and dried on some wax paper. One side of these is going to be darker than the other, so you decide whether you want to have all your wood showing the dark side out or the light side out. What you don't want to do is alternate and make it look like a zebra. So I'll probably put the dark side out. Okay, looking at time savers here. One of them is the Northwest Shortline chopper, and like a little guillotine chopper here. It is really a time saver. And another tip, we're going to need to cut a lot of wood to the length to cover, let's say, the 3 back walls. So we need a lot of strip wood that'll go vertically here down the wall. Just take that wall, lay it on the bed of the chopper, bring it far enough over, put the razor blade down, squeeze the wall against the blade, and then tighten your little blocker here down, and you have every strip coming out just the height then for the back walls. The front wall is the same height, so you can continue to cut those at the same time. That's what I did to get these pieces. And while you're there, you might as well cut the battens to that length too, that you're going to need for the front and rear wall. When you're done with that, because I'm going to, if you recall on this, also use board and batten on the roof, I would just take the roof piece, bring it in, get the correct measurement, and then chop all the pieces for the roof. So it's only on the end walls where I won't do it that way. There I'll make each of the pieces over length, probably cutting right in place as I'm going along, have a nice cut on the bottom, let them extend on the top, and then trim them off. So again, it really does pick up speed if you kind of mass produce that way. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, I'm continuing to glue strip wood onto the cardstock subwalls. And if you're a loyal follower of my channel, you've seen me glue stripwood on before, but if you're new, let me just show you my technique. You know, I never apply glue directly from the glue bottle onto the model, so I put some onto a shiny piece of paper, the kind that here in the States postage stamps come on, or any number of peel and stick kind of address labels, that kind of stuff. So I put my glue on that, pick it up with a toothpick, put on a sparing amount, then I put it onto the model. In this case, I am letting it stick beyond the top edge, keeping the bottom edge even with the bottom of the wall. And now I'm up to the peak, halfway through. If you look on the back, you see where the wood is extending. And I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to cut that off and do the other side. Cutting the wood out from the window frame from the back side is very easy. Made a little bit easier if you don't completely fill the hole first. So I'm going to cut these out when this dries and then finish this wall up. Back walls are basically done. They had no window in them, so there that is. Now, the only thing left to do is to take a sanding stick and, oops, I'm sorry about that. Got in the way of my... Again, one side is flush because I put it against my angle block. The other side might stick out a little bit. You just take a sanding stick and go over it real quick and your rear wall is finished. Okay, so we got 3 of those. Front walls had a door cut in them. Again, the bottoms have been kept even with the bottom of the cardstock. Both side edges are flush. You can see the wood extends into the doorway on both sides a little bit. That is easy to trim off with an X-Acto knife with a number 11 blade. And above the doorway, I put some scrapped pieces of wood, kept them even with the top of the doorway on the bottom here, but let them extend, and I'll just cut those off. So my front walls will be done, rear walls are done. I'm working on the side walls, and we will get back later when I start adding the battens. Talk to you then. Okay, I had promised an update when I was going to glue on the battens, and that's what this is. But first, just show you that I have framed out the inside walls of those windows. All the windows, all 3 windows, all 3 doors framed that way, not overlapping the siding, but rather along the inside of the window to kind of tidy it up. And that's the way I'll leave that. I have one batten, 2x2, scale 2x2, glued in place. This is a somewhat tedious job, but certainly not impossible. You just need to hopefully have a steady hand day. Take your toothpick, get a little bit of glue on it. This is not a time to be putting oodles of glue onto the thing, because you're just going to have to tidy up all the visible areas once you're done. So just a little bit all along the edge of that 2x2. And then you want to span the joint just kind of edge it over a little bit. That's another nice thing about the Aleene's tacky glue, is it kind of grabs right away, lets you push it around a little bit, but for the most part it's grabbing it. And then take a sharp toothpick, go along the edge of the batten, picking up any glue that oozed out. Give it one more. Just let your eye tell you whether you have the battens parallel. If you ever looked at an old building, especially after a couple years, you shouldn't get overly concerned if the battens are a little crooked, because with warping and so forth that happens. So there's the first 2 battens on. Again, as I said, a bit of a tedious job, but first of all, the prototype had board and batten, so I wanted this one to have it. And secondly, it just looks good. Now, if you wanted to, you could use battens that were 1x2s, but they are so flimsy, I find it better to use a 2x2 or even a 2x3 for the battens. Okay, that's enough for this update. I'm going to put the battens on all the walls, and then we'll come back when I'm ready to assemble the walls. Time for another update. I have glued the battens to all the walls. I've braced the interior of the walls just to prevent any warpage. And same thing is true here. A couple of braces on the back wall, one on the side wall. I've lined up the braces. Let's see if I twist it like this, you can see it. I've lined up the braces in the back wall and the front wall to be the same height. Later, once I glue these together, I can put a piece of wood between here and here, like a platform. It'll stabilize it, but more than that, when I put the roof on and want to put a smokestack in, the smokestack can go down and rest on that platform and give me another gluing area. I have glued the front wall and the side wall with the window, which does have glazing in it now, into an L. And I just put glue on the edge of the front wall, held it in place. That's, again, why I like Eileen's tacky glue. And within a minute or so, it's stuck enough that you can leave it on its own. Made another L out of the back wall and the right side wall. And now I'll just add some glue to this side of the back wall and this side of the front wall and glue them together into a building and hold them in place for a minute, and we'll be ready for the roof. Okay, that's it for this update. I'll come back when I'm putting the roof on. Okay, it's time to put the roof on. I have the battens on the roof. And if you look at these two roofs, you will see that on one of them, the roof boards and the battens are just even with the cardstock underframe. And on the other one, I have the roof boards extending beyond the cardboard by a bit. That's going to be on the back of the structure. And the reason I have that is that when you bring them up touching to each other, I want them to be flush at a ridge line that does not require any external ridgeline boards at all. They just butt each other. That's the way the prototype picture looked. And so I needed to let these extend the thickness of the cardboard plus the strip wood that I glued on it. And the easy way to do that is when you get your chopper. Let's see if I put it in this direction so you can see the chopping board come down. Normally what I would do is release that so I can get this out. Bring this down and do that, and you would get strip wood that's the width of the subroof. But what I want to do now is widen that by a bit. So I take, this is a back wall actually, but it's now got the strip wood on it so that the thickness here is the thickness of the cardboard plus the strip wood. And I'll insert that in here yet too. And then I'll clamp this down. And when I cut my wood for the rear roofing, it'll be this width plus the thickness of that and extend over. And that's what you want. Okay, I'm getting ready to glue these on. I'll come back once everything is glued together. Okay, I'm just ready to test fit the roof onto the slate cutter shack here. I did put a platform in here for the smokestack to rest on, but I didn't waste piece of wood. I used cardstock again, in this case part of a Kodiak Cakes flapjack waffle mix box. And I have on the front side of the roof put a piece of flashing in here where the smokestack will go. So that'll fit on the front. Got some bracing on the back of both sides of the roof. So it looks pretty darn good. There was no attempt to try to get the battens on the front of the roof and the battens on the back of the roof to match up. I would assume in the real world they used various widths of boards, whatever they had on stock for the roof. Here I have them all the same distance, but it would be odd if they all matched up on all these little shacks that they made. So yeah, it's ready to glue on, and then the only thing to do is put the door on the front, and the smokestack in, and this will be done. See you then. Okay, the first Slate Cutters Shed has rolled off the assembly line, modeled with the door open. Got the smokestack on. I'll probably just put a little rust around that. But other than that, one down, two to go. The other ones are in various stages of completion here. Most of them have the wood on the wall, but not the battens. There's a couple of walls yet that need the wood. I just got my order in, so I'll crank out the last two, and then I can complete the scene on the layout that utilizes these guys. So yeah, a layout can eat up a lot of little structures. I put them in the category of shacks, sheds, and shanties. And to give you an idea, the Bangor Slate branch that I've been working on has 3 of what you would call full-size buildings, normal buildings, and it has 9 shacks, sheds, and shanties if you include the chicken coop and the outhouse. And really you could go broke if you start trying to buy kits for all these little structures, not to mention the fact that if you're trying to replicate something from a prototype, you're not going to really find the kit to do it. Yeah, scratch building is the way to go. So, yep, 1 down, 2 to go. All right, thanks for following along. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have not already done so, please subscribe to my Jersey Highlands Bruce YouTube channel.